and welcome to Not All Fire. I'm Jude Evans, and Joe is, do you know, I think Joe actually is currently also presenting another webinar for the IFE at the moment we're recording. But again, he's preparing to go to America on Thursday to present some papers at a conference, so he's not joining us this week. But I'm so pleased. We've got Nikki Barrow from Ansi Horn, who presented at the Women Talking Fire conference that I was hosting a few weeks ago. Blew everybody away because it was a last minute, oh my god, we've had a dropout, can you come and do a presentation? Came on stage and did this most amazing presentation that we all loved. So I'd like everybody to welcome Nikki to the podcast.
Thank you.
So I'll do what we do to all of our guests, which is not as deep as Emily obviously got really confused last week when I asked her this question. But can you tell us who you are, where you come from, how you got here?
How long have you got? So I am Nikki Barrow, as you have just introduced me as, and I work for Ansi Horn as Associate Director for Building Safety. Very recently promoted, so very, very pleased.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much. How did I get here? Wow, that's a story and a half. I'm not going to lie. I have worked in probably every industry that you can think of. I started out of school in travel. I moved to banking because from travel happened the 9/11 stuff all those years ago.
Yeah.
So I was working in that industry at the time and went, yeah, okay, that's great. I can't pay my bills anymore because no one was traveling. So I moved into banking. That was tremendously boring. Sorry, all the bankers out there, but I particularly found it tremendously boring. So couldn't do that. And then skipped through a fair few different. I did beauty at one point. I was working as a beauty therapist, cosmetics, this, that, and the other. Fast forward to having my kids. I had 3 children, all within the space of 3.5 years, because I'm crazy. And essentially, both of my boys have ended up with diagnosis of autism. So when they kind of got a little bit older and we'd fathomed the younger years of trying to kind of promote toileting and promote speech and things like that, I kind of decided to go back to uni and study childhood studies with SEN, with specialist provision pathway, to kind of understand them a little bit more and understand their world. So I did that. I went back to uni, started working at their school, actually. So it was an SEN provision. They were in primary. I did not work in their classes. I will have you know that is not something I wanted to do. I was like, I see you enough at home. I don't need to see you during the day as well.
I'm giving them to somebody else.
Yes, absolutely. You can have them during the day and I will have them in the evening. And that's absolutely how it works. But yeah, so I worked there and the school ended up merging with another school. And it just didn't have the same feel to it. I kind of, there was a big family feel in the school that they were at and in the school that I worked at. And it kind of got more corporate when they moved away. So I then went to another SEN provision. Then I ended up going to mainstream. Then I ended up weirdly in secondary school and did the same thing and did an SEN provision in a secondary school, and then just ended up in mainstream and kind of looking after, I looked after 250 students as a pastoral manager. Wow. And then I moved into teaching, and that kind of spanned about 8 years of my life. And then COVID happened. And that tells you where we are in the timeline of the world, because everyone date stamps COVID 2020. Yeah. And COVID happened and I went, okay, this is bizarre. We're at home and I wasn't doing anything because obviously as a teacher, you're kind of reliant on being able to be in a classroom with 30 odd children. So the second lockdown was a bit easier because they kind of then got onto the whole Teams thing. And this is how the world of Teams and Zoom was created, I believe, which has been both a kind of pro and a con in my world. But yeah, it was weird. Everything got a bit strange going back. And I was very much kind of out of my comfort zone. And my husband, who had worked in fire for a number of years, was like, well, obviously Grenfell had happened at that point, and we were, 3 years later by the time we got into COVID, so that by the time we got out of COVID, we were kind of 4/5 years later. And we'd spoken about fire all the time. Like, we'd had conversations and we'd spoken about Lakanal House and we'd had conversations about Grenfell. And my daughter, who was, I mean, she's 15 now. So we're going back, it's been 9 years since Grenfell. So we're kind of going back to her being the realms of kind of six. She
Mm.
did this beautiful box up of toys that she didn't want anymore to send up to the
Oh,
kids from
oh,
Grenfell that had,
bless.
had all of their toys. Well,
Oh,
they didn't have
fantastic.
any, because
Yeah.
they didn't have anything else. So that was a big thing in our household. We talked about it a lot. And I just got really into everything in terms of understanding the journey, in terms of understanding what went wrong, in terms of, Pete App's book, Show Me the Bodies,
Mm.
is just phenomenal, and just written so well. And I just got into that. And of course, then when I hear about Dame Judith, who I was very pleased to meet a few weeks ago, thanks to you guys, doing the inquiry and the phase reports, etc. And I just read and I read and I read and I read and I read, and then the Building Safety Act kind of came out, and I was like, I want to do this. This is what I want to do. This is where I'm at.
Amazing.
Like, I just really love this, and I felt like the new legislation put everyone on such an even keel, because it was just brand new.
Yeah.
No one knew what it was going to be. No one knew how it was going to come about. No one, I don't even think they understood what what was going to be kind of
Very
there at the
clearly.
time.
Yeah.
So there wasn't the guidance, and everyone was kind of fumbling through and finding their way. And I just found that really interesting. So I ended up working for a local authority and a kind of arm's length residential management homes company sort of thing for a local authority in London. Um, and I worked there, and I loved it, but everyone was still getting their ducks in a row.
Yeah.
Um, and I was like, okay, I don't feel like I was having enough of an impact because of the fact that policies were being created, procedures. I mean, I was writing them, so I
Yeah.
kind of became a kind of policy and procedure writer for a time, even though I was kind of meant to be doing sort of coordination work. There was not much to coordinate. So it was a
No.
case of, okay, well, you've done policy. I'd done policy writing in previous years for another local authority and what have you. So it was very much, yeah, that was in my wheelhouse. Just, go to it. And I learned a lot then, because I was going through the legislation, I was going through what guidance was available at that point in time, and just fell in love with it. Really, really fell in love with it. And, there's been 29 pieces of secondary legislation since the Building Safety Act came out in 2022. And I've just
Yeah.
made it my mission to kind of go through all of it and understand it. And I'm certainly not a guru on it. Don't ask me what sections there are. There are way better people for that, but I certainly know how to navigate it. So yeah, just really got interested, and an opportunity came up at Anstey Horn. They were looking for a coordinator as well. I'd done my time years ago doing, the whole kind of sales thing, and I was like, it's a mixture of the both.
Yeah.
And I know that consultancy's always got a bit of a bad rep for, being the kind of double glazing salesman that, knock on the door and we'll try and sell you something that you don't need. And it's actually, I love the consultancy that I work in now. And I think you introduced me at the actual Women Talking Fire conference from Anstey Horn, who are a consultancy with a heart. And actually they really are, because we'll help you with the stuff that you need. We're not going to give you something that you don't. It's not about just selling something or a product, whether it be a safety case report, whether it be a framework strategy or what have you, to anyone and everyone who needs it or what have you. No, it's about providing a quality report, providing quality policies and procedures, talking people through, educating people through what they need to do to be a duty holder or to manage an HRB. So, and I
Mm.
love that, and that's the educator side of me coming out, is the,
Yeah.
that teaching people what you need to do, how you need to go about this, what the various duties are of the principal accountable person or the accountable person, etc. And I love that aspect of it. And a lot of people are kind of they get baffled by some of this stuff that they either didn't know came about, or they didn't realize that, oh, by having this contract with this managing agent, surely they're responsible. Well, they are, but you can't pass on a legal duty. So, when it comes to, the BSR coming knocking, and if they're going to take someone to court, they're going to take you as the principal accountable person. They're going to be looking at the managing agent. So, and actually, there's a lot of people that don't get that, and they don't understand that, and they don't understand the reasons behind it. And it's all comes down to, and it does fall back to Grenfell and that accountability, because, we're 9.5 towards 10 years down the line, and we still haven't got that accountability just yet. So that was the reasoning behind this legislation being in place, is that actually we need to hold these people to account. And I think that's where the accountable person come in, because that's what you are. You are exactly that.
What do you think the biggest misconception then, when you're working with clients to create building safety cases and resident engagements, and you're providing all the services for the building safety regulator? What do you think the biggest misconception or the biggest misunderstanding is?
Do you know, it's funny because my brain instantly went to I don't know, there's so many. And then a light bulb went off. And actually, there is one major one. And it's very much to do with the whole kind of, oh, you employ a consultant, you pass it over, you pay them the money, they're going to do it. Nah. Safety case reports do not work that way. We are working collaboratively with that client, or with that principal accountable person, with that accountable person, whoever it is that has kind of instructed us to do that, because it doesn't always have to be the principal accountable person. They do discharge their duties to others, not their legal duty, but the duties to, maybe put together a resident engagement strategy. It might not be in your wheelhouse. That might be something that actually a managing agent is better to kind of provide, and they're the ones that converse with the residents anyway. So absolutely, why not? But I think that the biggest myth is that you'll just pass over all of your documents to that consultant, or to me, to us, and we will just produce this thing for you and hand it back. And it does not work like that. It's very much a collaboration between, yes, you could pass us documents, but we need to have an understanding of what is it, how does it work, what is the procedure behind that? Is there a policy behind that? Especially with something like safety management systems, when you're kind of bringing in all those different policies, managing contractors, managing change, permits to work schemes, health and safety policies, all of those things combining to make your safety management system. And it's not a case of pass it over and we'll write up your policy and go, yeah, that's fine, that's done, and we'll pass it back. No, I need to have a good level of understanding of what's going on within your organization, what your reporting levels look like, what your organizational tree looks like, what your governance looks like, everything that's captured in that safety case report. So I think the biggest thing for us is, just having people kind of hand over that and go, right, you deal with that. No. We will deal with that. We will deal with that together, and we will help you, because we get that, there are many a person out there, and certainly the PAPs and apps, and I'm not going to call them their full name all the time, because otherwise this will be an hour and a half long. But yeah, the PAPs and apps out there that kind of go, okay, well, we'll give you XYZ amount of money and you'll just produce this. They need to understand that it's not that simple. It is very much a working together, and it's very much a, it's like if I was going to produce a policy for this podcast, I need to find out the whys and the wherefores before I do that, because it's all very well producing a document and telling you what you're going to do. But actually, Judith, you might say to me, well, I can't achieve that, and I'm not going to be able to do that. And this is something that we can't provide, or this is something that we're not allowed to talk about. Okay, well then I need to understand that in full before I can produce that for you. So, and it's the same for a safety case report, and the framework strategies that go with it, the resident engagement strategy, the mandatory occurrence reporting. I need to know what systems you've got in place. I need to know where your reporting lines go. I need to know who is actually going to be responsible for the one coordinating with the building safety regulator, because it might not always be that named person at the, who is not the singular person, but at the entity that is the principal accountable person.
No, and I think a lot of people also get this misconception when they go to a consultant to say, can you write my building safety case? That they'll just get a document and there you go, they put it on the shelf and they've done it.
I know.
And it's like, no, it's a living, breathing, working document. You have to review it all the time.
Document.
You have to do this all the time. It has to be part of your day-to-day process of, this has changed. We need to change the dates on this. We've had another survey. We've had another assessment. We've had another fire door check. We've had a fire alarm test. We've checked the AOVs. All of this still needs to go back into you need to have this whole kind of process that it might be done by a team of people. It doesn't have to be done by one person, but you have to be able to sort of input into this living document that is the safety case.
Well, this is the thing. It's a build. You're talking about a building life cycle, so it's not, yes, all right, the building stands there, but things are changing within that building all of the time, whether it be a new resident, whether it be a different system going in, whether it be that you're changing contractor, whether it be anything, ultimately every time you're having a survey done, like you said, whether that be fire doors, whether that be that you're having maintenance done, all of these things are part of your golden thread, and therefore all of these things should be summarized within your safety case report. So you're doing tests on a weekly basis. How could you possibly say that, we can leave this safety case report on the shelf and, update it once a year? Do you know what? You can do that, but you're going to be doing a hell of a lot of updates over the course of that year. That actually, why would you not do that bit by bit and kind of make that a smaller job rather than worrying about it being this mammoth task on a yearly basis?
Well, this is one of those things that I was thinking about the other day, because I've got one of my clients has sent 2 safety cases into the building safety regulator. We have yet to receive a building assessment certificate because very few people have those. But I was like, one of the buildings we first gave our safety case 2 years ago. Now we sent all the information, but so much has changed. Does the building safety regulator want us to send weekly updates? Is it snapshots? Can you imagine?
Now, can you imagine? I mean, we started off with 12,500 buildings across the country. That number's climbed already. And to be honest with you, I don't even know what to. And I don't even think it's done climbing yet, to be perfectly honest with you, because we know there are buildings out there that should be registered that are not. We know there are buildings out there that are registered and that probably shouldn't be. So actually, it kind of works both ways. So whether we'll actually get a kind of right figure, that's a little bit, okay, well, maybe we will, but I don't think it's going to happen for another kind of 5 years. We might be talking a decade after the Building Safety Act's come in before we are actually got our ducks in a proper row. But yeah, I mean, it's your safety case report at the time that it's sent off is a snapshot in time. It's your MOT, if you will. It's
the risk assessment, isn't it? Yeah.
Who's to say that your brake light's not going to go out the next day? So it's the same with the building. Who's to say your emergency lighting's not going to go wrong? Or who's to say you're not going to have a fault on your alarm panel? Or who's to say your sprinkler system's not going to go up the creek? You can't ever tell. You don't know. No one's got a crystal ball, and no one is expecting anyone to have a crystal ball and be able to kind of say, this is what, could go wrong. I think what the regulator's really just interested in seeing is, okay, what are the risks in your building though? There's hazards around us all the time. We're constantly risk assessing. I was having this conversation with 2 students literally about a week and a half ago. And I said, okay, tell me what risk assessments that you do in day-to-day life. And they're like A-level students. So they're like, oh, we do risk assessments in chemistry. And I'm like, okay, what else? Nothing. I was like, you're telling me you don't risk assess when you cross the road?
You look both ways.
You stop.
We've done our
you
risk
look left
assessment.
and right. You risk assess. You've listened out for the cars. Not that you can hear the electric ones nowadays, but anyway, you've listened out for the cars. Yeah, I know. Tell me about it, right? But you're risk assessing. That's exactly what you're doing. You are assessing whether you are going to be in danger. Car comes along, there's your potential hazard. Oh, if I step out, what's the likelihood of me getting run over? Probably quite high. If I stand and wait, what's the likelihood of me getting run over? Yeah, well, this is the thing. Yeah, don't go to London. The rules don't apply in London,
Rules
apparently.
don't apply in London. Risk
No,
assessments are very different in London.
they are very different in London. It's a case of, can I get over the road quick enough in front of that lorry coming towards me? That's probably not a good idea. But yeah, so, it is, are you aware of the risks in your building? Do you know where your potential hazards are? And can you document that? The BSR are not looking for a gold standard building. They're not looking for your perfect archetypal, oh, isn't everything wonderful? It's like Care Bear land. They just want to know that you're aware and that you understand what the risk is. And if something went wrong, can I manage that? So the biggest part of your safety case report is actually providing them with the information that you just got a level head and you know what you're doing. So actually, in a situation that does arise, God forbid, whereby something does go wrong, you're going to keep your wits about you and you're going to be able to deal with it in an appropriate manner so that we don't get a repeat of 9 years ago.
Yeah, absolutely. Here. I think as well as it's not a compliant, the BSR are not a compliance check. You don't have a compliance check. That's your compliance check is your fire risk assessment and it's your fire service audits. They're not looking to make sure that you're managing compliance in your building. They're making sure that you have that, you've identified, well, what possibly could go wrong, what structural issues could happen, what physical issues could happen to the building, what fire, how would we deal with it? How, if anything happens, are we going to then deal with it?
And how do you recognize it as well?
Yeah.
Because ultimately, we're not all. I'm not going to sit here and say that I am a competent fire safety person and a competent structural assessing person and a competent health and safety. That person does not exist. And I feel like that's why the whole building safety manager thing, kudos to the building safety managers out there, but I feel like that's why it came out of the legislation and wasn't a mandatory role in the end, when Michael Gove kind of said, no, we need to take this out because of, all the kind of other reasons that
for one person.
I think, to be honest with you, the reason is you cannot be competent in all of those areas. You cannot. However, what's really important is that you can recognize when something is going wrong and then engage the competent person to come in and have a look. Is there a significant crack in my building? Do you know what? If there is a crack in your building, then keep an eye on it. Have a look at it. How is it maneuvering over time? Has my windows, my double glazing blown? What's the reason for that blowing? Is it actually movement around the window? And is that the reason why the glazing's blown? Is there a lot of mold in the property? And I know we're kind of delving into Awab's law and what have you now, but ultimately, mold is moisture. Moisture's water. Water is a problem for structure.
Yeah.
So it stands to reason that actually, if there's a significant amount of mold in that property, right, why? Where is that coming from? What is going on? How is that impacting the structure of the building? It's looking at that as a bigger picture rather than just going, oh, we've got some mold or, oh, we've got a crack. How is that progressing over time? What does that look like? Is that increasing? Is that spreading throughout a different area? And then you kind of get a scope of feeling, right, now this is becoming a risk or this is becoming a significant risk. Do I need to instruct, a fire engineer? Do I need to instruct a structural engineer? Do I need someone who is vastly more competent than I am to come in and look at this area specifically and kind of give some actions, recommendations, etc., as to what we need to do to rectify this situation?
The whole multidisciplinary team that the building safety regulator has created, because you're right, none of us can do everything.
Nope.
I mean, there's some clever people out there that think they can, but you're right. I don't think you can, because you have to be too invested. I mean, I just do fire safety. I don't even really do health and safety anymore. I am aware of it around me, and if I see something that I think is dodgy, I will report it. But all I do is fire, so all I focus on is fire. I know nothing about structure. I'm quite happy to admit I know absolutely nothing about structural engineering. We've had structural engineers on the pod before, where we talked about some of the significant structural incidents that have happened over time. And it's a whole fascinating other subject, but that's a whole other career. That's like a whole other lifetime of learning about structure. When I'm still learning about fire, and I've been doing it 20 plus years. So, but it's good. How do you think people have been dealing with the resident engagement side of things, and how well do you think residents are taking up the resident engagement?
Do you know, I'm going to be rather candid, I think, when I speak about this, because I do think there are too many companies out there that are just seeing this as a tick box exercise. You know, I've put together my resident engagement strategy. I've sent it to my residents. I'm done. I'm
Job
good.
done.
Yeah.
I put a poster up in the foyer, and I put a letter through the door.
There's a QR code somewhere in the building that someone can scan, and you know, and I remember so only going back maybe 2 years or so, where people were providing these kind of drop-in sessions and actually physically going to the buildings to be with their residents. Now, don't get me wrong, for whatever reason, maybe it's uptake that seems to have kind of not fallen by the wayside, but the kind of conversations about that seem to have diminished, and you don't hear so much of that anymore.
No, I think you're right.
And it's now a digital exercise whereby we'll send a newsletter out on a quarterly basis or something like that, and it's okay, that's great, but how do your residents want to hear about this stuff? Like, have you asked them? Have you got that feedback, and have you implemented that feedback? That is a really big deal, because if there's anything that we all hate as human beings, it's not being listened to.
Yeah.
So actually, if I, as a resident, and I'm not a resident in a high-rise building, but I can put myself as in the shoes of someone that is, because if I'm being asked if I want, to receive a quarterly newsletter, or if I'd rather have a 6-monthly drop-in, I'd much rather see someone face to face than have a leaflet dropped through my door, because I'm not interested in a leaflet dropped through my door. And there will be those that are, don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it's for everyone, but to really listen to the residents individually, and then kind of, form this majority view, I just don't think is being done, and I just don't necessarily think it's being done well if it is. We've had the new regulations on our peeps drop in April recently.
Oh, yes, we have.
We have, and it's a very controversial piece of legislation, in my opinion. There are a lot of crossovers. There's crossovers with the Equality and the Equalities Act 2010. There's crossovers with some of the SEND code of practice. There's crossovers with GDPR. There's crossovers with a lot of
fire safety order.
There's a lot of legislation, where it kind of crosses over. And what I was most, I think, kind of shocked about, really, in terms of our world and looking at new pieces of legislation that came out, or that come out on a frequent basis, is that I couldn't really get my head around the fact that to kind of to apply this legislation, all you really have to do as a responsible person is send out a letter, an email on a relatively frequent basis going, does anyone here think that they are vulnerable?
I had this conversation with a client last week. I have a meeting tomorrow. Actually, I've got Elspeth Grant, who we've had on the podcast a couple of times, who is
love her.
I love her speeches. She is an occasional listener. But I was talking to her last week about our peeps and PCFRAs, and again I've got a meeting tomorrow afternoon which she probably will get dragged into, because you're right, because there's so much confusion, and this is with one of my local authorities I work with, and there's so much confusion between where the boundaries are, which is AWAB's law, which is the fire safety order. The fire safety order only applies to communal area. Inside the house is the Housing Act, which is AWAB's law. So who's doing what? How? The whole definitely one of the things that one of the key takeaways for me for all the PCFRAs and the RPs is you have to have a strategy in place about how you're going to manage it.
Yeah.
And so many people have just gone, oh no, let's get everybody trained so everybody can do them. And I'm like, whoa, you need to work out how you're going to do it, how you're going to manage it, who's it for, and how you're going to kind of what the processes are. Because so many people have just gone, oh, we'll just go out to everybody and we'll do everything. I'm like, that's not what they're asking. That's not what the requirement is. And then how is that even going to work? All you're now doing is spending loads of money training loads of people who might do it on so infrequently that they'll have forgotten how to do it anyway. So,
well, a little bit of a kind of inside track, and certainly anyone who's a member of the Property Institute, they are bringing out like a hefty guidance piece.
The Property Institute?
Yes, the Property Institute. They are bringing out yes, TPI. They are bringing that for essentially managing agents, property managers, big kind of, and they have got a really large following in housing. But again, people in fire or people in building safety, we don't necessarily get to hear about all of these things, and it's the same the other way around, and actually if there was more talk between a kind of bigger circle of people, then maybe we'd have a better understanding. And the reason I know that the TPI document is really heavy is because I've had kind of dealings with them. I basically has kind of proofread it and offered some more examples of different vulnerabilities that are there, because your staple is, and you go to, and I'm not going to throw any other consultants under the bus, but I've heard of a couple that have been at some big events that have gone, right, if you're in a wheelchair and if you're blind and if you're deaf, okay, great. What about everyone else?
Yeah, as I say,
don't get me wrong, completely understand. But what about those neurodiverse people out there? And what about the people that have broken a leg and need a temporary PCFRA?
Hearing. Yeah, no, Elspeth is the brilliant one for going, like 60% of people have actually got some form of disability.
Absolutely.
And they're all hidden disabilities. Whether you're just overweight or your knee's a bit knackered or whatever, all of these things. Have you taken sleeping pills? Yeah.
Absolutely. But I get that there's a fine cut-off line, and ultimately it is very difficult, because where do you draw that line? Who else is vulnerable? Is a pregnant woman vulnerable in the third trimester of her pregnancy, or is a mum vulnerable with very small children, until they're grown up a little bit, because actually you're a single parent maybe with 3-4 kids. I don't know. I don't have the answer, but it's finding that line about actually where do you cut off? Because then actually, are we capturing everyone? Are we capturing too many people under legislation? And I just think there's a fine art into the descriptor for that, and actually, figuring out whether you are vulnerable or whether you are not. But
also that if you have a good resident engagement, and you're going and talking to your residents, you'll know all of this.
Absolutely. And so I was going to say, so to come all the way back to our resident engagement strategy, all the way back, I just think it's so vital that it's just not a piece of paper with a strategy, policy, whatever you want to call it, written on it. That actually what's more important is that you are actively going out to residents, that you're talking to residents, that you're listening to them, and you're understanding what it is they want. Because the more you listen to them, the more they will engage. At the beginning, maybe not. At the beginning, maybe there were a lot of residents that went, you know what, I'm a leaseholder, I don't want to know, this is my house, this is my kingdom, it's my palace. You can just stay outside of my palace door, and I'm not really interested in understanding. Actually, the amount of properties that I've been in where I've just knocked on the door because they might have had a little mat on the outside in a sterile means of escape area where they shouldn't have, and I've knocked on the door and I've said, would you mind taking this in? No, that's fine. Do you know why I'm asking you that? And I will
Yeah.
ask them, do you know why I'm asking you that? No, not really. I don't really understand it. Okay, this is your lifeline to the outside world in an emergency. This is also your neighbour and theirs and whoever else is down your corridor. This is their lifeline to your safety. If this is a trip hazard or this ignites or, all of
Yeah.
those reasons. And actually, when you've spent 2 minutes, not even that, explaining that, and they go, I didn't think about it like that. There's your
Yeah.
education piece. There's your resident engagement. And now you've got them, because now I can go back and knock on the door. Do you know what? Thanks so much for keeping your mat out of this. I
Yeah.
really appreciate that. If you come across any building safety stuff and you strike up that relationship and
Yeah.
you start to build that relationship and you start to build trust in the respect that, do you know what? I don't want to encroach on your time and I don't want to encroach on your palace. What I do want to make sure is that you and the people that you love in here are safe, and so is everyone else on this floor, and so is everyone else in this building.
Yeah. I am the most optimistic person in the world, but I think sometimes I've worked in social housing too long now, and I'm like, some of the tower blocks that I go to, and I'm like, and you're right, we started running events and tea mornings and tea evenings, and you're right, people have stopped doing now because the take up is one, and
Yeah,
the one person who comes there is the same person who always comes and moans about everything.
yeah.
And it's like and I understand why people don't do it, because it can be soul destroying.
But then find a different way to interact with
Yeah.
people. How many different digital platforms are there out there that you can create videos with, little animations with now? You know, there are more ways than just knocking on people's door. There are more ways than inviting someone to a coffee afternoon. There's more ways than just sending an email,
Yeah,
and
I do
actually,
agree.
not enough companies are utilizing the social media that we've got out there that is literally at our fingertips, that is literally not costing us anything,
Oh,
to be able to interact with people. You know, if
so
you
many
have,
so many tower blocks have got a Facebook group or whatever. It's that I know at least two in a different borough from where I'm staying. Two different buildings have got that Facebook group.
set up by the residents or set up by
Uh,
the managing agent or
I'm
the
going to
or
say
the
set up by the.
responsible
I'm going to say
person.
set up by the residents, and I'm going to say you have to be approved to be joined some of them.
But I
But
bet you
again,
bottom dollar there's a high percentage of ones that are set up by the residents, not by any
oh yeah,
managing
always
agent or
always set up.
housing
Yeah,
provider or what. There you go.
always set up by the residents.
Why isn't the company utilizing that? Why isn't the
Mad, isn't
company
it?
getting on Facebook or Instagram or Snapchat or whatever? There are so many out
So many
there that
platforms, man.
doesn't
Yeah.
cost a bean. And actually, all you need to do is basically get your building safety manager and or comms manager trained up, or to work together collaboratively and not in silos, dare I say it. Sorry, it's almost swearing, isn't it, really?
Push the boat out there.
I know, right? To work together and to talk to each other, to come up with something that kind of puts, even if it's really silly things around the holidays, don't leave your Christmas lights on all night on their own, or
Don't have a
buy a new
barbecue
set of
this time of year.
LEDs.
Yeah.
Don't have a barbecue on your balcony, please. If you want to go out and have a barbecue, have it somewhere that's not on your balcony, and
Yeah.
preferably, at least 50 meters away from the building. But
On a hard surface that's not
it's on a hard
grass.
surface, absolutely. But especially this time of year, whether we don't want to be
Ooh, when
starting
it's
any
brown.
wildfires.
Yeah,
That is
let's not
not,
let's not do
no,
it.
no, no,
No, no,
no,
no.
no. But just thinking outside the box with your form of communication it's a big deal, and I think it's just not used enough. And I think there are many a people that would interact with that sort of communication a lot more than what's going on right now.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think it is. It is one of those things. I mean, I've said it in many conferences and presentations that if we could just go and knock on every resident's door and just wander in and have a cup of tea and a chat, all of our buildings would be safer.
More than likely.
But some people just don't want that. Some people absolutely don't want anything to do with your provider or your
Yep.
local authority or your managing agent.
And
They're
that's
not
fine.
they're not interested.
No.
Um, and some people just don't have the staff.
Well, there is that, it's resource heavy, isn't it? If you're
Yeah.
going to kind of start, putting on coffee mornings and or afternoons or whatever and things like that. So, I guess that may be part of the reason why it's diminished a little or what have you. But honestly, I just think actually, rather than one person sitting behind a computer sending out emails, what what different ways can you
Yeah.
interact with people? What are the different formats? Actually, you know, Teams meetings and things. Why aren't we utilizing more of that and having,
Yeah.
little groups of people that want to have their voice? And actually, there's
It's
just
the
a
whole thing about,
number of different ways I think that you
yeah.
can interact with people, and like I say, but you've got to build that rapport and that trust first. That
Yeah.
is a staple for anyone to be able to kind of want to interact back from a resident perspective. I feel like you've got to put in the time to build that trust and to build that rapport first.
Yeah, I think the problem is as well is if you live in social housing, or a lot of people, in my personal opinion, I've seen a lot of people who lived in social housing who lived there for a long time who are like, "Why are you doing this now? You've never listened to me in the last 15 years."
Yeah, yeah,
So, and I don't like being negative. And you're right. I mean, somebody I know from a different part of the country put on like a little family fun day at one of their tower blocks, and they got a little bouncy castle because everybody's got kids in there. So you
yeah,
get all the kids down because all the kids want to play, and then you talk to the parents, and all of a sudden it's
yeah.
like, I know, it's almost like, oh, there's such a, if you can drag the kids out and provide something for them to do, then yeah, you're going to get a bit more take up. But it's it's a really, I think we're really good at buildings. We're really good at the physical side of things. We're really good at understanding how to do compliance. We're really good at being able to manage our buildings if they were empty. But then we fill them with people.
Yes. And therein lies the problem, because buildings are usually safe until the people get in there. Not that I'm
Always.
saying to people don't have people in the buildings, because that would be a little bit pointless.
Get your people out of
Um,
buildings.
but exactly. But I think, to be honest with you, yeah, it's that human interaction. And like you say, I'll put something on for the kids, and then all of a sudden you start to have these conversations with parents. Have the conversations anyway, like in some way, shape, or form. It doesn't need to be that you're going out there with bouncy castles and putting these things on. Like I say, building that rapport is so vital, because as soon as people start to understand why, I think we've just kind of got to a point now where we're really, really, really bad at explaining why. We tell people we're going
Yeah.
to do stuff. We're saying, okay, this is what we're going to do, but we don't offer a why are we doing it. We
Oh, that's
don't
a really good
educate people
point.
and offer up an
Yeah.
explanation as to why. Why haven't you spoken to me for 15 years? Do you know what, Mr. X? I'm going to level with you. I didn't have to. The law said I didn't have to. Nobody said I had to. We didn't have the resource for it, and that was wrong. And we've made a really poor decision in doing that, and we've stuffed up. But ultimately, what we
Mm.
want to do now is we want to put it right. And I do want to make sure you're safe in your building. And there are people out there that care. And I've got 3 children. And ultimately, I wouldn't necessarily have them living in this building in the state that it's in. So until I get to a point where I would be comfortable having my family, I'm going to make it my mission to make you and your family safe.
Brilliant. What a great place to end. Thank you so much.
You're very
um,
welcome.
Thank you so much for coming on. I know how passionate you are about tall buildings and about protecting the people within them. So I'm really, really pleased that you agreed to come on. I just want to say that the the consultation, the consultation for fire strategy reports has got another 2 weeks. So it's August the 16th, August the 18th. I'm getting tired now. August the 18th is the deadline for the review of that consultation. So please comment, or you can't moan about it when it comes out,
Yes,
because
have
what's
your
the
say,
have
or
your
you
say?
have your say, because otherwise, what it's like voting,
Oh, you can't
prime
moan
ministers and
if you
things. You
don't.
can't moan if you don't have your
No.
say. Simple as that.
The ADB has closed. That closed on the 1st of July. I checked the website before the checked the website before I came on the podcast just to double check what date it was, and they said that they're reviewing all of the it's now closed and they're analysing feedback. But what was interesting was there was a big notice that said this consultation was under Keir Starmer, and I was like, oh, is that going to make a difference?
Oh, interesting.
Yeah,
Oh,
let
dun
me.
dun dun.
I
There's like
know.
I feel like we need a bit of I don't know if
Bam,
we're going to
bam,
be able to EastEnders
bam.
thing or something at the end,
Do, do,
some
do, do, do,
drums.
do. Do you know what? No, it really did. Yeah, this was published under
Wow.
the
Yeah.
2024 to 2026 Starmer Labour government. So now I'm like, are we not doing it now?
Interesting.
Anyway, we
Watch
don't
this
know.
space. Watch
Watch
this
this
space.
space. So thank you guys for watching. Thank you everybody for listening. Not quite sure who's on next week. I am still Joe will still be in the USA delivering presentations, probably on wildfires. Again, it's wildfire season. We've lost some more firefighters. It's terrible everywhere around the world. Do you know we've lost firefighters in Greece, Australia, the USA, loads of different states in the USA, and Spain as well in the last few months because
That's
of the
super
wildfires.
sad.
It's been really, really bad. But yes, thank you everybody for watching. Thank you again, Nikki, so much.
Thanks, Jude. Appreciate it.
And see everybody next time.